What's up, family, and welcome back to the channel. Thank you all for all of you that have been hanging out with us. Feel so bad because yesterday we didn't get to do our Sunday sessions live like we normally do, but air conditioner broke down, so it's just beyond me. It's super duper hot, and so I actually didn't think I was gonna be able to get a video done for today, but it looks like some shade is on my side. And so your boy is taking advantage of it because I do have something that's on my mind that I definitely like to talk about and stimulate some conversation around. So, of course, before we do that, if you haven't already, make sure to like the videos, subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert notification bell. I don't know if you noticed, but we are just a few subscriptions away from 3,000 subscribers. What a journey it has been this year. And there's no way we'd be this far without your support. And the only thing I can ask now is, hey, don't stop supporting now. Let's keep rising. This is just absolutely beautiful. So in the spirit of that, please make sure to share this video or just any video on this channel that is your favorite video. Why don't you share it with somebody this week, and let's see if we can go ahead and hit that goal. And I'm trying to figure out some ways that we can celebrate together, of course. All right, so and of course, if you're looking for ways to support, you can consider joining our Patreon. Those links are in the descriptions. You can also join the channel directly through YouTube. How amazing is that? You can financially support through Venmo, PayPal, Cashapp, some other stuff. You know, they're making it possible. Also, you can do super chats and super thanks. That's always appreciated. And of course, you can check out the merch. All right, so let's kind of jump into this conversation. For those of you who are atheists, free thinkers, skeptics, non-believers, whatever moniker you attach yourself to, you have unlikely at some point been engaged with the question, well, what do you believe now? What do you believe now? That becomes the question. I now realize how trivial, pedantic, and futile this particular question is, as it fails to ascribe an object for consideration and it ignores the obvious. The question is incomplete, to be sure. And what I mean by that is, when someone asks me this question, like, "Hey, well, what do you believe? What do you believe now? If you don't believe in God, what do you believe?" My response to that question is always about what? What do I believe about what? You see what I mean when I say that question is incomplete? About what? And then and if you're asking me what I believe about God, and you know that I'm an atheist, then the answer should be obvious, because the answer is in the definition. Okay, so which I do want to walk through this a little bit. But it kind of reminds me, just recently I had an exchange in the comments, which I think you all know, as long as I feel like you're asking a question or making a critique in good faith, I'll always kind of respond in good faith. I think sometimes people think good faith is me agreeing with your critique, and I'm a hard ass in that way. You're gonna have to meet the standards. I'll never agree with your critique just because you feel it. That's why I left religion. But this is kind of appropriate to share because the critique was, it was on the video I did where I suggested that Christianity is not monotheistic, and this person says, well, according to the definition you shared, then do you consider ghosts to be gods? And so my response was, because my video had nothing to do with ghosts, of course, but unless you're talking about the Holy Ghost. And then in that manner, you'd have to. Okay, I'm not going to go down the rabbit trail, but the big point was ghost. And I responded that, if the ghost is a supernatural being and has supernatural abilities, then that would meet the technical or classical definition of a god. And so then the person responded with, well, that definition isn't satisfactory. So I like Wikipedia's definitions more than Oxford's definition. And, I don't want to be the one to call out the obvious, but Wikipedia is not a dictionary, you know. And I'm not one of those anti-Wikipedia people. Like I use Wikipedia frequently. it's a great resource to find other sources, especially, which, okay, I'm going to do a whole nother subject about that. But, um, but so or I don't know if it was a she, but they gave me the Wikipedia definition, which again, Wikipedia is not a dictionary, so that's not what you're getting from Wikipedia. You're not getting a definition. You're typically getting a cultural understanding based off of different cultures, and so that definition said it has to be a god has to be the creator of the universe. Now, obviously, that's not an accurate definition of the word God. And so my response to that was, well, um, that then X's out 99% of the Greek gods, and the Roman gods, and the West African gods, and the Native American gods. And so it goes on, and so it's just like, what you don't realize is this definition that you presented is a definition that's steeped in a cultural bias of monotheism, and so um, it's kind of cultivated, if you will, to kind of keep those things codified. Um, and then of course the person responded, well, 99% of the world disagrees with your definition. Now, to be clear, I never provided my definition. I provided Oxford's definition, which the person mentioned in their own comments. And so, of course, again, I reminded them, well, I guess 99% of the world doesn't include Oxford, and again, those Greek gods, Roman gods, and such and such and such and such. But it became clear that this person just wanted to argue for the sake of arguing, and I didn't get up from the children's table to continue to play those type of games. But the big point is, what I want to make here is about definitions, because one of my arguments is that popular definitions often don't align with technical definitions, and popular definitions are typically based on cultural biases and social preferences. However, popular misunderstandings of a definition does not change the definition. And then I'd also add to that some words have never been well defined because we've pulled our definitions from cultural encyclopedias, as this person tried to do, as opposed to actual dictionaries. And then I'd also encourage people to take it a little step further and also study the etymology of words. Now, of course, we can agree to change the definition of a word, however we decide to do so, but it is not the popular misunderstanding that changes the definition. I often discuss this when talking about the word religion with people, because people say, well, excuse me, that's because it's getting hot in here. Um, People say, well, religion by definition requires a God or a belief in the supernatural. And he said, well, that's not true. The only way for that to be true is for every religion by application to have a deity or some grasp of the supernatural. And that's it's not as unilateral as we like to think. And so there are plenty of religious ideologies that hold no supernatural inclinations, and um, that hold no place in their doctrine for a deity. And most of those types of religions are built more so off of speculative ideas, um, which I'm not saying are foundational, but that's the whole point. There is that definitions, are important, and you don't get to change them just because you misunderstood it. So, again, like with the religion thing, so someone demonstrates to you that, well, there are religions without gods. Do you just say, well, those people are just doing religion wrong, or do you recognize that, nope, my understanding and definition and perspective of religion may have been influenced by the fact that I live in a society that has been heavily influenced by Western religions, where monotheism is a high, is a high ideal, and so and where supernaturalism is real, or however you want to say. Um, yeah, yeah, and so I can go on and on and on there, but speaking of definitions, let's get some before we kind of proceed further with this conversation. Let's define belief. And again, I'm going to pull this from Oxford, and that's partly because I'm a little lazy. I just pull this from the quickest place that I can pull it. I do what I encourage others to do. I just use Google. And so I typed in word defined. And so the word is, or actually word definition. And the word is belief, and the word is atheism. You know, and that helps me from just going, so I don't go off of my own misunderstandings of belief. Now I do consider myself, and maybe this is a little bit of Darante LaMar exceptionalism, but I do consider myself a person who can change definitions at will if I think I have a sociological understanding of those definitions, which you will see. I will make some videos to that point. But the definition of belief, according to Oxford, is an acceptance that a statement is true, or something, or that something exists. And I think the clearer form of that is an acceptance that a statement is true. Um, if you say something exists, then and you believe that, then you're accepting that statement as true. So I do like to reduce redundancy. I don't know if that's the project management side in me, or if that's just from who I was when I was a pastor, or it's the productions aspect of me. But I don't like redundancy. So a simple definition of belief is just an acceptance that a statement is true. Belief itself has nothing to do with supernaturalism, has nothing to do with superstition, has nothing to do with religion, has nothing to do with faith, has nothing to do with the typical things that we've actually sometimes correlated the word with. It simply means an acceptance that a statement is true. All right. It means I accept it. I accept a statement that something is true. So when someone says, I believe that God is true, or that God is real, believing that doesn't make the statement true. It only means that the person who's saying it, or the person who's making the statement, accepts it as true. So let's kind of define atheism in the same way. Atheism is disbelief, or lack of belief in the existence of God or gods, which is why it's very important in order to understand what atheism is and what atheism is not. You first have to understand what belief is and what belief is not, because the word belief is critical to understanding the definition of atheism. And I'm kind of going this way around it, because to me, this is where the misunderstanding comes when people ask the question, what do you believe, or what do you believe now? So the answer, as far as what do you believe now, if it's pertaining to God, if you know I'm an atheist, the answer is literally in the definition: disbelief, or lack of belief in the existence of God. So what do you believe now? Not God, because I'm an atheist. That's what that means. That means I no longer accept the proposition that there is a God, and or specifically that there is a Christian God, or even more specifically that Yahweh. I do not accept the idea that Yahweh, Jehovah, and whoever else his minions is. I do not accept I do not accept that they existed, exist, will exist. I do not accept that Jesus died for my sins. If he did, then why do I still got to keep repenting for my sins? That shit don't make sense. And I don't accept that Jesus rose from the dead, nor do I accept that Jesus saved the world. So a more accurate question may be, especially if your question is to get insight about my relationship with your religion, your question should be, what don't you believe? Because then I can give you a long list of what I don't believe. You say, hey, well, Durante, what don't you believe about Christianity? I can give you a long list. But when you ask me, what do I believe? That's an entirely different question, and it's incomplete. So what I would like to kind of drive home here is that atheism is not a changed belief, and that's why I wanted to share these definitions. It is the rejection of a specific belief, the specific belief in the existence of gods. It's not replacing God with something that's just like God, which is partly what that question is insinuating. Is that if you don't believe in God, then surely you replaced it with something that does all the same things that we believe that God does. And it's just like, no, I've completely detached myself from that ideology altogether. For me, it was largely recognizing that I don't have a need for a God. So again, nothing to reassign my belief to in place of God. That place is no longer needed, right? For most, leaving religion isn't about changing your belief. It's not what it's about. For me, it was the freedom to no longer attach my belief to things that were unfounded or otherwise not true. So it's not replacing belief, it's recognizing that I have no reason to believe, therefore no replacement is actually needed. When I stopped believing in Santa Claus, I didn't feel the need to replace Santa Claus with Rudolph. I didn't start, well, there has to be a real Santa Claus, because that's what this is insinuating. Like, well, if you don't believe that God did everything that I think God did, then you have to believe that something else did everything that I believe God did. No, I don't. That's still trapping me to your false narrative. I don't have to believe anything about anything, actually, and then isn't that the other insinuation, that you have to believe something about how the world got here, that you have to believe something about evolution, that you have to believe something about questions that we maybe don't have answers to yet, and or maybe some questions that we do have answers to. But it's like this insinuation. Well, if you don't believe in my God, you now owe me an explanation of everything you believe, which is insane, because that assumes that Christianity provides any viable answers about any of the big questions, and it doesn't. Christianity doesn't tell us how the world gets here. It doesn't tell us how the universe operates. For the most part, by far and large, the Bible gets it wrong almost every single time when it starts talking about the actual universe. Hell, it gets half of the shit wrong that it says about the earth. So in that sense, it's kind of disingenuous, and I don't understand that stretch of a correlatory distraction. Yeah, I just made that up. I like it. It reminds me of, there was a movie I saw where they used this just incredibly asinine phrase, the accelerated velocity terminological inexactitude, which basically means lies travel fast. I loved it. I loved it so much that I used it in a few sermons. And I think the movie that was from, Easy A. That's what that was. Okay, so back to regularly scheduled programming. Many of the answers that I didn't have before. So even before, when I was a believer and I believed that God created the heavens and the earth, there was no account in Scripture that talks about how God created the heavens. And so, even if I believe that the heavens were to be translated to mean the entire universe, which it would be hard for me to take that meaning, because it'd be very weird to say, God created the entire universe and the earth, as opposed to God created the entire universe and several earths or several planets or several rocky balls of fire, whatever. But there were no answers to those questions, and you could talk to many Christians and just ask them the answers to those questions. Hey, how did God create the universe? And most times you're going to get a response such as, some questions we won't have the answers to until we're in heaven. And so, if people who say things like that while also expecting other people who no longer share their beliefs to have answers to questions that they don't even have answers to, like, get out of here. And yeah. So, many of the answers that I didn't have before, I still don't have. But I also no longer feel the need to pretend to know by faith what I've not equipped myself to understand by discipline. I hope that makes sense. And so, just to kind of start concluding this, bringing this in, because it's getting hot in here. I now think about belief as a responsibility, and that's one of our taglines for the channel: keep rising, but also think responsibly, right? And maybe we'll start doing believe responsibly as well, because to me, and I may do a separate video on this. To me, believing something requires a responsibility of interrogation. or at least that's how I live it, right? To quote a controversial book, study to show thyself approved. Again, I didn't become an atheist by trying to be a bad Christian. I became an atheist by trying to be the best Christian that I could be. I was trying to study to show myself approved. I was trying to, in all of my getting, get understanding. I was trying to be like David, who was a man after God's own heart, who said, there's one thing that I seek after, that one thing that I desire, that I may dwell within his house and inquire within his temple. In other words, David said, the most important thing to me about any relationship with any God is that I could be able to ask this God some questions and actually get some answers. And that's what led me to atheism, is realizing that anything that I was going to believe, I had a responsibility to interrogate. After several years of climbing the, church politics and climbing the ladders and finding mentors who were doing great things in hopes that some of them were going to be able to help me crack some of these codes, I found that so many pastors had not taken on the responsibility to interrogate those things which they believed. And I vowed, like, oh no, I cannot be that. And I can no longer just wait and hope that somebody else is going to give me the answers that I need. As I became disgusted with them not knowing the answers, I became convicted myself, as in, like, well, what you been waiting on? Why would you wait on them in the first place? And that's when I started cracking this code of realizing that how I had trained myself and cultivated my mind to distrust my own capacity to engage with information and come to appropriate conclusions. Oh man, I didn't mean to go all that way, the point is that belief bears responsibility. There's nothing wrong with believing. I'm not one. I know quite a few atheists who don't like the word believe. I don't believe nothing. I'm like, well, you believe things. But so I'm not one of those people who has a problem. I think I've kind of illustrated that on this channel. I don't have a problem with words. I don't have a problem with inanimate things. Period. Just period. So that there's nothing wrong with believing for me. To me, it must be accompanied by good reason if it is to have any utility in conversation or application. So, when it comes to the question of what do I believe now, well, I believe in things that I have good reason to believe. Things that are verifiable, measurable, and reproducible. For example, this chair, I believe that in most cases, if I sit in this chair, I will not fall. That is verifiable because I am currently sitting in the chair and I am not falling. It is measurable because other people can see me and can actually measure. You can measure it. The chair has not dropped. And it's reproducible because I can do it again. Otherwise, it just means things that are dependable, or even better, useful. I believe, I only attach my belief as of now to things that are dependable and things that are useful. If it's not verifiable, it's not dependable. If it's not measurable, it's not dependable. If it's not reproducible, it's not dependable. If it's not dependable, what can I do with that information? What can I do with that belief? I think one of the biggest realizations for me was like, oh, dang, like literally, whether I believe in God or not, nothing about my life changes one way, shape, form, fashion, or another, which means the belief in itself literally has no utility beyond the propaganda. There may be exceptions, but that seems to be the rules as I live them. I hope I've said something that is of value, something that helps you think, maybe something that even gives you some perspective and some insight. Of course, I always enjoy being able to jump in front of the camera and hang out with you a little bit. We have some exciting times coming up this week. Guess what? This week, this Sunday, Pastor Collins show. It's coming back. I hope y'all are ready. I'm super excited. Kyle is excited. The production crew is excited. We're like, yikes. So get ready, get ready, get ready. All right. I love y'all so much. Until next time, keep rising, stay progressive, and stay beautiful. And do me a favor, stay cool because your boy is burning up. I'll holla.